Good morning. Welcome to this citizen dialogue, this time with the Vice President of the EU Commission and Commissioner for the EU Energy Union, Mr. Maroš Šefčovič. Welcome, Mr. Šefčovič.
Good morning.
So the purpose of these citizen dialogues, obviously, is to give us, the citizens of the EU, an opportunity to talk to the commissioners, ask them questions. So I sincerely hope that you will help me do that. And don't hold back. You don't have to be clever or know everything about energy policy or climate debate or anything. I'm pretty sure we can ask Mr. Šefčovič just about anything. Is that true, Mr. Šefčovič?
We can try, and we'll see that if I would be able to answer to all these questions. But at first, I really would like to thank Niels Dudal, CEO of SE, for hosting us in this fantastic building, because it's, I think it became like a shrine for all the architects who want to learn how you can actually build a building with only 20% increase in initial capital cost, and then really to have something which we should call energy positive building, because this building actually produces more energy than it consumes. And I'm very glad to be in Denmark again, because it's a country which is very progressive if it comes to the smart use of energy, to the renewables, and usually I'm coming to the happiest people on this planet, because I know that you always compete with Norwegians, who is number one or number two.
The Norwegians on that.
And this morning actually started my visit very unusual, because usually I go to the power generation factories or to energy intensive factories, but this morning I was in Lego. I was given this little figurine, and then I learned that this is the business car, because it really looks like the lady, the chief financial officer who was receiving us there, and here you have the phone number and the mail. So I think that we should get something like that for the European Commission. I would personally like it. I'm not sure that all of my colleagues, but that's another innovation. So it's great to be back in Denmark.
Thank you. So just for a brief word on the background of the EU Energy Union, as some of you may be aware of, this was formed in 2014. At that time, the president of the Commission, Mr. Juncker, said, I want to reform and reorganize Europe's energy policy in a new European Energy Union, and the ambitions were high. They were to make EU less dependent on imported fossil fuel, to ensure the free flow of energy among the EU countries, to reduce the emission of CO2 by improvement of energy efficiency, talking about this building, and to make EU the world leader when it comes to sustainable energy. So as you can hear, energy policy actually touches on all kinds of areas of policy, be it foreign affairs and security matters and agriculture and refugees and nonetheless climate, of course. So we're going to be talking a lot about that. Which brings me to the current affairs going on, breaking news right now. The rumor has it, up to now, as far as I know, it's still a rumor that the US president might pull the United States out of the Paris Climate Agreement. So I think we're going to be talking about that a bit, because that will definitely, if that happens, we don't know that, but if that happens, and it looks like it will, that will definitely have great influence on the EU energy policy. So citizen dialogue. I'm kind of curious to know, for a start, what do you think about the communication between Brussels as such and the member states of the EU? So let's have a little vote on that. If you think the communication is pretty good, raise your hand. Okay, that was a hand and a half. 3. No, you're within the EU. You can't vote. Are you too? Okay, so a hand and a half. And if you think it's not so good, there's room for improvement, as they say. Raise your hand now. Yeah. So is this surprising to you, Mars?
No, not at all, unfortunately, because you're absolutely right. That very often, I mean, and we see it, I think, over the last few years, that very often the Brussels seems to be too distant. Very often we are portrayed as a bureaucratic machine, which is very difficult to comprehend. And I can tell you that we are doing our utmost to change it. I mean, we clearly went through very rough process of streamlining of our policies. We are not talking about hundreds of the new proposals, but about the very clear 10 priorities, and Energiunion, digital single market, or fair trade are just 3 of them. And of course, we are trying to communicate to the best of our abilities, but I think that we now are coming to the realization and understanding also from the side of our national leaders that we cannot do it alone. I mean, that to speak about Europe, about the European policies, it must be our common effort, because of course I can be here like a couple of times a year. My colleagues are trying to do the same. When you have to visit all EU member states, you just simply realize how the EU is big. That's to come to 28 countries, let's say twice a year. It's already like 56 weeks which you have to devote to this, and we know that there are less weeks in 1 year. So therefore, I think what is very important is that the citizens would hear the coherent message. I mean, from the European institutions, from the national leaders, so we would not be confusing the public about what's European, what's national, where we fight, where we agree, but try to be more and more coherent, because what we are doing in Brussels is our best effort to provide the European value added to the policies which should be there for the citizens in our member states. That's our job. I mean, that's what we try to achieve. Of course, sometimes we have these differences. Very often we have to look for the compromise among 28, which is not always 100% acceptable to one or another country. But what we need is to have that understanding that we are there for you, and we can communicate it only if we would be on as much the same wavelength as possible with the national leaders. And in that case, I believe that it would be also better understood by our citizens.
Well, and really that's why we're here now. That's why it's important for you guys to just raise your hand and the speaker not to do like that. Okay. Somebody will fix that, I hope. So we just mentioned briefly the rumor that the US president is apparently considering pulling out of the Paris Agreement on climate action, the agreement that between the world's countries from 2015 to reduce emissions of greenhouse gas and improve energy efficiency and increase the share of renewable energy. How will it affect the agreement as such, in your view, if the US pulls out?
I think that mentally, I would say the world is kind of expecting that the US will pull out, because, I mean, it was so highly stated many times in the pre-election campaign. And I remember very well when we had the meeting on the climate issue in Marrakesh, which took over from Paris last year. Already at that time, and I think it was November last year, it was like strong expectation from China, from Africa, from Asia, that now Europeans, it's up to you. We hope you will not let us down, that you would assume this global leadership. And our answer was yes, we've been doing this until now, and we will continue to do that, because we believe that it's a responsible thing to do. And on top of it, very clearly, we can demonstrate that we accumulated so much experience since we started with renewables and responsible climate policies, that on top of it, it makes business sense. I think here, in Esbjerg, you became such an energy capital of Denmark. You have a huge business in the offshore wind power. So you know the best than many people in the world how dramatically the price of wind energy is dropping over the last years. And I can say that we see the same with the solar panels. We Europeans are the strongest and the best in integrating the renewables into our system. We are digitizing our grids, we are smartening them. Of course, a lot needs to be done, but I think we are seen as a natural technological leaders if it comes to the renewables, and I think that we have strongest public support in promoting these policies. And therefore, I mean, for the decision makers and for politicians in Europe, it's a natural thing to continue to do this. But I believe that even in the United States, and I was in White House, what was it, 2 months ago, still the administration was very fresh. I think that I was the first foreign visitor who was received by the new Secretary of Energy, former governor of Texas, Rick Perry. And I was asking them, what do you plan, how you want to approach this issue? And you saw that what was very important, in particular for the White House, was the question about if our energy transition makes the business sense, that if we are not losing money on this, that how the industry is coping with it, how come the citizens support this transition. For Rick Perry, I think it was a little bit easier because he was governor of 15 years, and he told me, look, I want to tell you that we are not only big on everything, because Texas is very proud to be the biggest state on oil, on gas, but we have also biggest wind park in the United States, and I know how the wind energy is becoming very, very competitive, and he was suggesting that we see that Europeans, you are very strong in innovation. You are very strong in smart energies, and this is where we want to work with you. But at that time, it was quite clear that they've been still trying to map out how the new president would approach this issue. So if the news is really true, and today at 3 o'clock Eastern Time in Rose Garden, he will declare that they would leave the Paris Agreement. Again, it would depend how they want to do it, because it's just not such an easy thing to do. It would require, it would take years, and it might happen until when, I don't know, second term of this one, or probably, or maybe the next, the president would be in the Oval Office. And I don't think that it will really change the course of mankind, and I'm absolutely sure, because 194 parties, the countries would still go ahead, I'm absolutely sure, with the Paris Agreement. And I believe that most of the American businesses, and I am very, very convinced that most of American cities would continue with these responsible policies, because I know that situation there quite well. The solar industry today is number 2 employer in energy sector in the United States. We are working with Mike Bloomberg, he's a former mayor of New York, on the Global Covenant of Mayors, which is grouping the cities from all over the world. We have more than 7,500 cities from across the world who have sustainable plans for the future for their cities, meaning that to be admitted into this covenant, you have to present the plan when you are more ambitious than your country. And we have that many cities in that covenant, and in the United States we have 130 cities like that. We have provinces like California and many other states where simply they clearly want to go in that direction. So I think that in the end, responsible businesses, like we've been there in the morning in Lego, where they have a clear commitment that they want to have clearly all energy needs covered by renewables. Or IKEA, which wants to be also 100% based renewable, or Google's and others who are very, very, I would say, environmentally responsible, would simply drive the way in that direction, together with the mayors who simply have to fight air pollution. They have to fight all that problems which are coming, brought by the climate change. And then I believe that clearly the big majority of the countries would go in that direction. The last alarming figure I would mention, because it was highlighted yesterday by the President of the Commission, is that if we do nothing, so simply more than 80 nations of this planet would disappear. because these are the small island nations, these are the nations living in a coastal area, and I think if you look that we had, if I remember correctly, 155 countries plus the EU signing the Paris Agreement, so more than 80 is a pretty big part of it, and I think we just really have to be responsible and use the technology which we already have at our disposal right now, put it in a proper policy framework, based it on the clear legislation, and really make sure that this transition will be done in a smart way.
So I note that you feel sure that the rest of the 194 countries will just go on like nothing happened, even though United States, 14% of the reduction.
I don't think that it will be that like nothing happened, because it is a disappointment. Yeah,
yes.
I mean, of course, it's much better to have such an important and big country like US, you know, to be in a leading position, to push for the positive change, to advance this cause. Now it depends. Would they stay neutral, or would they try to do something against this? I think it will not happen. But of course, it's like if you are in a strong sports team and suddenly the very important player quits the team, which is of course not good. And it doesn't improve the mood in the team, but at the same time, I mean, we know that we have to continue, we have to fight on, and clearly we will. And I think, therefore, more of a, I would say, global eyes would be very much now on Europe. What we will do? Will we change? Will we hesitate? Or will we go forward? And I think, therefore, now it would be extremely important to press on with all the proposals we put on the table, where we clearly already now are transforming all our commitments we have undertaken until 2030, and I would say including the outlook, how we want to build carbon neutral society in a post-2050 period. We are already transforming them in the legislation. So everything what we promised, it's already on the table of the member states and the European Parliament in the form of legislative proposals, and I believe that some of the proposals, like reform of the emission trading scheme, will be adopted maybe already this summer, or definitely in the autumn, and many other proposals which we made will definitely be adopted this year or the next year. So we will start the next decade, I believe, in a very responsible way, with a clear framework which would get us to our 2030 commitments and to this 2050 outlook.
So will this open up the agreement, so to speak, so that, for example, you can negotiate with the other big players who's going to take upon them the 14% that the U.S. are apparently going to leave off?
I don't think that we will have some big renegotiations, because you will just simply open something which would be very complex and difficult. I think that what would be very important to say that, look, I mean, we all have to stick to our commitments we have undertaken, and really get to unleash even more, I would say, this positive energy I feel from our companies, from the technological advancement, and from our cities, because when you see what we already have in our labs in Europe, or in the companies like we are here today, so we know that we have a solution for most of the things. I think what we need to improve is to get more of a, I would say, business attitude, to include more the people, the citizens, as a kind of shareholders of this exercise, because where we are right now, if you look at all the big transformation, usually they have so-called hockey stick curve, that you start rather slowly, and then you have this critical mass, and suddenly the pickup is very, very strong. And I think that we are at this, you know, breaking point where clearly, so it was a breaking point. So where you clearly feel that despite the targets which now seem for some of the European ministers as very, very demanding. I believe that with a proper technology use, I think we would not have a problem to exceed them.
So we have a question here from the audience. I'm pretty sure that's turned on, but just try and talk into it, and I'm sure we'll find out.
Well, my name is Henny Esbjerg, and I'm coming from Union, HK, here in the southern Jutland. And I kindly ask Mette to translate, because I'll continue in my mother language,
yes.
Danish.
Sure.
Allerførst, tusind tak, fordi du kommer her. Det er jeg sikker på, at det er en af de ting, der vil åbne op for at føle, at vi som borgere har et tættere kontakt til Europa. Det var spændende at høre om den vision, de visioner, du har omkring en energisektor, eller en energiområde her i Energiunion, sådan noget det.
So thank you for coming. I'm sure this will open up the sense of Europe being closer to us, and thank you for your vision on energy and climate, even within this region.
Jeg kommer lige fra en kongres i Barcelona, hvor vi talte omkring transportområdet. Det var den europæiske transportunion, der havde sin kongres der.
So having been to a conference in Barcelona on transportation.
Din kollega Violetta, som er EU-kommissær for det område, hun nævnte blandt andet at omkring transport og de problemer, der er omkring transportområdet, og jeg kunne til min glæde i dag se, at der er kommet et udspil fra EU-unionen omkring det. Hvordan man undgår social dumping og løndumping på det område.
Okay, so we're talking about transportation problems and a new suggestion from the EU, and it's on social dumping and how to avoid social dumping within transportation.
In
Yes.
truck drivers,
Right, yeah.
among truck drivers.
Yes, exactly.
So the question?
Så mit spørgsmål er, hvilke visioner er der for at imødegå den slags udfordringer på det her område også? Fordi som formand for en fagforening, så er det jo egentlig de ting, som er meget på sinde. Jamen, hvordan undgår vi social dumping? Hvordan går vi løndumping på det her område? Fordi vi kan jo se, hvilke udfordringer det skaber hele vejen rundt i andre lande, også i Danmark især. Fordi, som du også selv nævner, det her det er også et spørgsmål om penge, og der er rigtig mange store spillere på det her marked. Så hvordan kan vi undgå det?
So how do we avoid that similar situation in the energy sector? That's what I hear you say, right? In the energy sector, social dumping, because finances are lacking, and it's maybe too easy to make deals where you have a social dumping.
Jeg var nemlig med i en dialoggruppe, hvor man talte omkring det her, hvor man sagde, at Esbjerg, det er Danmarks offshore hub, så der kunne man jo se, at problemerne de allerede begyndte at stige op, så hvordan vil man undgå det?
All right.
So, no, thank you very much. I see that you are very well informed, because yesterday we adopted such a last big puzzle of the proposals which we promised we would deliver under the Energiunion strategy. So we've been dealing first year and a half with energy and climate policies and the proposals, and yesterday we presented the big package on the transport. And it consists of such three parts. Yesterday we've been dealing with social issues, with, for example, with truck driving. We've been dealing with issues of toll systems, how we can better implement the polluters and user pays principles. And I was also highlighting how important it is that we would pull our forces together and use our financial instruments in making sure that we would have world-class infrastructure for alternative fuels, electric cars, hydrogen cars, LNG for our ships, and maybe CNG for heavy trucks or the buses somewhere in the north. And what we need to do, and it was also the discussion we started to have with Mr. Dudal, to be well prepared for this next revolution which is coming, and these are the self-driving autonomous cars. How can we make sure that also our infrastructure will be well prepared for these new cars of the future? But coming back to the truck drivers, currently the situation is really a terrible one. because we have rules which are not very precise. We have a lot of illegal activities in these sectors, where you have in many of our member states letterbox companies created, which is just hiring the drivers, put them in very tough conditions, as your compatriot Margaret Vestager called it yesterday in our college discussion, that some of them look like modern slaves. And simply we have to tackle the issue. So what we proposed yesterday, and I will try to simplify it, because of course when you talk about the laws it's always complicated. We have here the two primary legal issues. The first one is that we have so-called posting of workers directive. It means that how can we actually use this freedom of work in the EU. And then, just to simplify, there is very clean principle. If you want to come to work to Denmark, let's say from my country, from Slovakia, it must be done under the same condition as a Danish workers, so there is no social dumping, and everybody, I would say, is on the labor market under the same conditions. At the same time, when we've been updating and this proposal, and now it's discussed among the member states, it was very clear that if it comes to transport, and especially international transport, it's much more difficult. Could you have the full application of this directive, for example, for the truck drivers who goes from Slovakia through Czech Republic to Germany to Belgium and so on and so forth, and he spends, I don't know, 2 hours, 3 hours, half a day, then he unloads, spend it one day and goes back. So it's very difficult to properly implement such a law because simply you are crossing that many countries. So then we decided, what we did yesterday, that for so-called international transport, that when you take the cargo from one country to the final destination, there will be an exception for the application of this posting of directives for 3 days. So it allows you to go there and back, and for 3 days you are exempted from this posting of worker directive. So it would be the contract you got from the company which is actually sending you to deliver the cargo. But to make sure that we would not have empty trucks on our highways, very often the companies, for example, when you go back, so they take something from one place, they stop in another country, they load it, unload it, and they go until they come back. This is called cabotage. And that was also problematic in the past, because you had the rule that for 7 days you can do 3 loadings and unloadings. And of course, nobody could police it, nobody could monitor it if it's really respected, so very often it was abused. So what is the new proposal is that, that you can do it for the 5 days, but for these 5 days you have to respect the posting of worker directive. So if somebody would be here and they will bring the cargo here, somewhere very up the north, and on the way back they will do the small distribution until they cross the borders and they will go out of Denmark. They have to be working under the Danish rules. So it means that they have to respect the same salary conditions as a Danish workers. So that's the new proposal. Again, it's a compromise, so I know that the countries from the center would think that this is too generous for the countries from the east and from the south, and I'm sure that Poles, Spaniards and others would think that this is too harsh on them. So this is sometimes, you know, where you have to look for the, I would say, the compromise, where we believe that we could really, from one side, to respect that we are on the single market, and from the other, to respect the social responsibility and fair treatment of the workers. So that's what we proposed yesterday, and of course now it would be discussed among the member states and the European Parliament. So we might see some modification, but this was the best we could do yesterday, and this is how we proposed it.
So, but do you see a need to make similar rules, though different, since the scope would be different, for the energy sector, this being in an offshore hub?
Yeah, I think that, I mean, if it comes to the working conditions, I think that from the European Commission point of view, it's very clear. What we want to see is that there will be the equal pay for the equal job. And very often, of course, this was not so. Very often the single market and this freedom to work across the Europe was abused, and the social standards been not respected, and that brought the resentment. So now the rules are very clear, and it would again very much depend also on the local authorities to enforce it, to control it, to monitor it, so we can actually avoid social dumping in the future.
Do you want to follow up on your question?
Thank you very much for your answer. I was just wondering, you said that... jeg fortsætter lige det.
Please, yeah.
Jeg undrer mig bare over, at når vi ved, hvor store problemer der har været på transport, og er der stadigvæk. Vi ved, hvordan der bliver ført penge i skattely, fordi at der ikke er ens regler for hele Europa, ikke også? Hvordan er det, vi beskatter pengene? Hvordan vil man undgå, at de ting, de sker i større udstrækning, end det allerede gør nu inden for energisektoren?
Okay, so we know that there's been problems within the transport sector with workers that have not worked within the same rules, and with people that would hide away money from taxation. So why are you not taking steps to avoid that within your sector in the same way that they're addressing it right now in the transportation sector?
You mean in transport sector?
No, in energy sector. In the energy sector. She's saying
yeah,
they have taken measures to avoid this in the transportation sector. Why don't you do the same in the energy sector?
I think that for energy sector it would be even simpler, because here the rules are clear, because there are no exceptions from the posting of worker directive. So if somebody from energy sector is employing the people from other EU member states, so they have to do it on the same conditions as the Danish workers. So that it should be, I would say, very clear. And of course, if it comes to the taxes and the revenues and the profits, everything has to respect the local rules. Of course, we had and we have in Europe some supranationals who had some sweetheart deals in some of our member states where they had special agreements on really paying very, very little taxes. And you know that it's actually your compatriot who became very, very famous because she's fighting these big companies. And I think Margaret really was very brave in taking on these international giants and simply pushing for very clear respect of the rules, that simply the taxes should be paid in a place where the revenue or income was generated, because that's only fair thing to do, and this is how we avoid the taxes, and this is how the countries can get the fair share of the revenues, and they will not allow the abuse of the tax system by different tax havens, where simply they are living off the fact that they have a good lawyers and the system, which are actually luring the companies for allegedly paying taxes on these small islands. And so that's very important, and therefore the tax evasion is really very high on the Commission's agenda, because we are losing the hundreds of billions of euros every year. And clearly, I mean, these are the money which are then missing in Europe and are missing in the investments we need to make here in our countries.
Thank you.
Yeah, so my name is Noah, and so you said that the whole world is looking towards the EU to improve the climate situation, right? So my question is, how do we keep on improving if, for example, Poland or other Eastern countries can keep on producing great amounts of fossil fuels, notably coal in Poland? And how do we change this?
Yeah, I think you're right, and at the same time, I have to say that we also have to be fair to these countries, because when we started with, I would say, very serious climate policies in Europe, so every single member state, including the Poland and all new member states, they got the targets. How we want to reduce greenhouse gas emission by 2020, how much we would increase the production of renewables in these countries, and what should be the improvement which is expected also in the field of energy efficiency. And I have to say that most of the EU member states would reach all of these targets. There are actually 3 countries which might have a problem, and I have to say that none of them is so-called new member state. So Poland actually is already fulfilling the targets for 2020 as the most of the EU member states. Okay, we can discuss what the target's demanding enough. Was the economic crisis which we went through reason for that very, very good performance. But the fact is that they reduced dramatically the greenhouse gas emission from the former communist energy-intensive economies and it enormously a lot. And of course, the coal is a very sensitive issue, because I understand that also in such a progressive country like Denmark, you still use it for the energy production, and you're also looking for the ways how to gradually phase it out and replace it with renewables, or replace it with less carbon-intensive fuels like gas. And that's, I think, the challenge, especially for the countries where the coal production has such a strong tradition and was so big, like Poland, like Germany, which is also using the coal a lot. At the same time, I have to say that we also are sometimes very critical on ourselves, which of course is a good approach, and it motivates us to do more in the future. But if you compare the commitments which have been presented in Paris, so I can tell you that nobody doubts, nobody disputes that our commitments have been the most ambitious from the whole global community. Therefore, everybody is looking at Europe as a leader in this effort. And coming back to Poland, I was there 2 weeks ago, and I wanted to go to Silesia, which is a very important coal mining region, with a new initiative, which I really felt we need to bring to these coal mining regions, just to tell them that what we want to see is a fair transition. That we have to realize that in the case of Poland, we have 200,000 people who are working in this sector. And they told me another 400,000 people who are somehow working, not in the mines, but in that energy sector, which is linked to the coal mining. So we are talking about 600,000 people. And simply we have to help them to develop the new business model, or to invest research and innovation which would allow to use the coal for different things than just burning, maybe for some chemical productions, or to develop the carbon capture and storage, or other technologies which would allow us to use the coal in much less polluting way, because the coal is not only the problem of Europe. If you look at India, if you look at Africa, if you look at China, I mean, all these big economies are looking for the ways how to reduce the pollution. And what was very important for me, because very often Poland come across as a country which is stuck to coal, that they do not want to discuss anything else. And again, it's not true. If you look to the Baltic parts of Poland, you would be surprised that when you go there, you would have the same talk as I have here in Denmark about the wind turbines. They're actually, they produce more than 50% of steel and concrete for all offshore wind turbines in Europe. So I believe that many of the wind turbines which are built here probably have that concrete and steel which is used for these wind turbines coming from Poland. And when I talk to the local members of the regional parliaments, what was very striking for me, I have to say, and I think that I know that country quite well, so that governor of that region told me, we want to work with you on this transition. We want to learn from the regions where this was successfully done, because we do not want that our young people would leave my town. We do not want that the young people would leave my region, because they are worried that their kids would have respiratory diseases, that they would develop some kind of allergies, that they would not find the job which would last here. And it was a very human thing to hear from him, that they realize that simply we need to work together to find new business model, new future from this region. And the good thing in Europe is that we have a lot of good examples to learn from. So I'm very confident that also Poland, other countries, and all of us, we would definitely meet our targets in Paris. And knowing how this technological development is getting faster and faster, I think that we would really exceed them.
So, but what I hear the young man ask for is that you do see a difference in the different governments' ambitions regarding the progress, whereas the Danish government has been pretty ambitious.
Yeah.
Some governments haven't been, and that pace with which you move towards reduction of CO2, reduction of fossil fuels and all that. Does that give Danish companies, for example, a disadvantage or an advantage?
No.
Denmark has been
I think that Denmark really did a right choice, and I have to say that Denmark could serve as a model country in seeing the money going into the renewable industry not as expenditures, which is really the problem of several countries in Europe and many countries in the world, and I think that's one of the problem of this U.S. administration, that they see it as a cost, expenditure, nuisance, and the bureaucratic burden. This is what you hear. In Denmark, you saw it as an investment in the future technologies. And I think now that investment is paying back, because if you look among which are the companies which are among the, I would say, the top leaders in renewables, many of them are from Denmark. So if I talk to the energy integrators, if I talk to the wind industry, if I talk to the companies who are so strong in home automation, isolations, and I'm sure the architects of this building would be also very much demanded on the market. So these are the companies which have the first mover advantage. And these are the technologies which are so much needed in India, in Africa. Let's not forget we have still 1.3 billion people on this planet who have no basic access to electricity. And we know that, let's say in Africa, where my daughter was born because I was posted there for a couple of years, I mean, we know that in the countries like Congo, we would never be able to have these huge power lines going across the jungle, but you can have microgrids. You can have solar panels, you can have wind turbines, which would power the whole community. And this could really unlock the potential of the rural communities there. This would simply create the conditions that they would not feel threatened, that they cannot develop their businesses there, and they're looking for some place to go. So therefore, I think Denmark, and I was in Copenhagen in your House of Engineers, is really cutting edge technological leader in this respect, and I think that you already see the benefits and you will see them in the future. I was at the signing ceremony between your transmission system operator and Danish system operator about the creation of this artificial island in the North Sea. I mean, when you see, I mean, it's a futuristic project. It was all over the global media that Danes and Dutch decided to go there, and you know that you are not alone in that we have this North Sea Offshore Grid group where is 10 EU member states, the European Commission is there as well to help to coordinate, set up the meeting, work on common standards, and the plan to have 100 gigawatts coming from the North Sea is again something which would be the unique project, which I'm sure would be studied by many other major economies, because this is really the way to the future. The wind turbines are far enough so the people don't see them. They have a stable wind because this is what you have, and when it's offshore. And of course, if you join the forces, if you do the proper meshing of the grids, I mean, in the sea, and find the efficient way how to get it onshore, so that's really the energy source of the future.
Thank you. My name is Anders Storke from the Danish Energy Association. Normally, when we meet in Brussels and when I meet with your colleagues and the people from the commissions, the discussion very often becomes very technical. We will discuss transmission lines, market rules, primary energy factors, and so on. And last night when I talked to my son, and I was saying that I was going to meet you here today and talk to the Commission, and he said to me, well, don't talk to the Commissioner and don't ask him questions like you are talking to me when you're explaining the job you are doing in your when you're in Brussels and so on. Ask the Commissioner, how can the Energiunion, the winter package, I learned him the word winter package, how can that help me in my normal life? How can it support me when I grow up? How can it guide me when I take an education? And the other way around, how can I support the Energiunion, the winter package, how to realize the visions within the winter package? So supporting the real life of citizens of Denmark and other citizens in Europe. That was the question he would like to ask you.
Okay,
So
let's just ask. Is everybody familiar with the winter package? So just explain just briefly, what is the winter package?
But
for
I think that you have
parts
very,
of it?
very, very smart son, and he's asking clearly
Yes.
the questions how we should try
You'll
to
be a
answer them.
journalist one day.
So I will really try to answer it in a way that would be not the technical, because what we proposed in the winter package is actually the deepest transformation of our energy systems as they have been built 150 years ago and based on the fossil fuels. We simply need to change the way how we are trading the electricity, how we are integrating renewables in our system, how we are digitizing our smart grid so we can use the current technologies better. So in the end, your son and all of us would benefit from better services and lower prices as end users, because currently you are from the energy sector, and even though the Nordics are, I think, doing the best if it comes to the market functioning and market performance in the energy sectors, but in many of our member states, market principles almost do not exist because the market is so overregulated that you have very low wholesale price. Nobody wants to invest in the power generation, so the services are getting poorer and poorer. But at the same time, we have so many taxes, local fees, transmission system cost added on the cost of the production of the energy, that the end users are complaining universally that the energy prices are too high for the industry or for the households. And if we compare our prices with the United States, it's true. I mean, it's 2 or 3 times higher, depending if you talk about the gas or electricity. So that's what is the winter package about. And of course, if you want to change it, I mean, you have to change a lot of rules, and therefore they compare the winter package to the Bible and Gone with the Wind together. And I wanted very much to deliver it as a Christmas present. so all the energy professionals had, very good reading material, I would say, for the whole Christmas period. But that's what was necessary to do. Now, of course, we are going from one proposal into another proposal, and I believe that we will together really transform the market. So to come back to your son, I think we simply need to do this, that with the results that we would have cleaner, cheaper energy, that we would have less air pollution in our cities, and we would really promote these new modern technologies which would clearly keep Europeans as this technological advanced continent. And advice for education, or how the young generation could help, I think they're already helping. Because if I compare their attitude to mine, or mine to the attitude of my father, if it comes to the environmental consciousness, readiness to share the cars, for example, or thinking about how much energy do we consume, what do we do with waste, or if the car is a real status symbol or not. So here I'm sure we know that for them it's much more important to have a nicer smartphone or better laptop than a nice car. And simply they are much more environmentally conscious, and I think therefore they would be driving this new greener approach to the economy. And for that we need the young generation which would be very well prepared. So when I talk to the engineering companies, to the smart energy companies, I mean, they lack experts. We simply need young people to study more sciences, to study mathematics for IT, to study chemistry for all the energy storage and energy products. We need physicists. We need, I would say, this cross-fertilized new scientific minds, because we do not know, as I was quite struck looking through the statistics the other day, that the big part of the jobs we have right now didn't exist 10 years ago. And I think it would be even faster, and probably the most of the jobs we have today would be completely transformed. There will be completely new jobs 10 years to come. So it's very difficult to prepare yourself for the job which you don't know how it would be named and what you would actually do. But we all know what would be the features you would need. You would need to have analytical mind. You would need to understand how the sciences are working. You would need to have the good ideas about the engineering, and for sure you will have to be very digitally strong. And I know that these are the hard studies. It's much more difficult to study this than history or arts and these subjects. And I have 3 kids, so I know the challenge. But that would be my advice. That and I have to say, a lot depends on the teacher. If you have a good teacher of physics or mathematics who can kind of motivate you and push you in that direction, I think you would be then very happy to study the subject. If you are scared from the 5th grade, my goodness, tomorrow there is mathematics class, so you develop some kind of, worry that, this is too difficult to study. But I think this is where we need the people. I was talking to the car industry about autonomous driving, and I'm not sure that I will cite the precise figures, but they told me that it's much easier to develop the autopilot for Airbus, because you need something like, 15 million lines of codes. But he told me, how much codes do you need for a single car? 90. Because, the plane goes like this, and in the city you have to stop, you have to have the plan of the city, you have to control the speed at different times, so it's much more demanding. So the coders, the engineers, the IT experts and the scientists clearly would be needed, and the best way how they can help would be to push us. All of us through the social media, spread the good examples, criticize what's going on, and be very active even locally. And I see that more and more also local authorities is using this digital media to improve the performance of the city. I was just teasing the mayor of Vilnius because he's new, very progressive, and he introduced such an application that anyone can take a picture of the pothole on the street and send it to the mayor, and he's supposed to get it repaired within 2 weeks. So I said that I'm sending you one because I just saw one just in front of the conference room, and I'm definitely transferring the app to the mayor of Bratislava. But I think he would need, not 2 weeks, probably 2 months, if not even a longer period. But he told me, yes, we did it, and immediately, we had so many, contributions, how to improve the city. So just to be interested and active citizen, I think that's something what all of our countries and what also the Europe needs.
So what you're saying is that the suggestions in the winter package are the frameworks that's going to make for this to happen, all the modern cities and the modern way of organizing ourselves.
I think it's new market design, how to trade electricity. There are new rules how to integrate better renewables, and there is a lot of provisions how to overcome that very intransparent system of different subsidies, which is making the market operations in many countries almost impossible.
So, but if I were him, if I were not Anas, but Anas's son, I would say, okay, so if these 8 suggestions are not ratified, they're just taken off the table and thrown away, how's that going to impact my life? How am I going to feel the difference?
If you do nothing?
Well, if there's a winter package and a not winter package,
I see.
how are they different in my life?
If there will be no winter package, so I think we would clearly see that maybe in the Energi it would be different, but in most part of Europe we would see that electricity prices would go through the roof, that we would have very outdated energy infrastructure which would not be able to accommodate more renewables, because we simply would not have capacity to balance the intermittency of the renewables. So it means that we would probably go back to the traditional sources of energy production like coal. So you would have more air pollution, and of course it would be total reverse motion than what is needed if you really want to fight climate change. So that's really the importance of it.
All right, thank you. We have a question here.
Yeah, my name is Henning Bo Madsen, and I'm working with Danish NGOs working in environmental issues and energy, and we have been doing that for many years. And I want to say that we are very pleased to see that in the winter package and in the presentation from members of, not the members of the Commission, but officials from the Commission, you stress citizens' participation in the future energy system. And we were pleased to see that into the directives, put into the directives. But at the same time, we experience in the practical politics from the Commission and from also administered by the governments and so on, we experience a lot of barriers for ordinary people to become prosumers, to take part in the transition. We experience barriers used with the use of the state aid guidelines, putting up barriers for people's possibility to participate. So my question is, how will you deal with all the barriers that is at the same time created within the legislation, the rules, and everything?
No, you're absolutely right, and thank you very much for reminding me of this one, because big part of the winter package was also the what I would describe unprecedented empowerment of consumers, because you're right, depending on the country, but I would say in the majority of the member states, there is still a lot of administrative barriers if you want to become prosumer. And I think it again goes, it's in a sharp contrast with I would say the wish of the citizens and also with the technological developments, because when I talk to the construction industry, they told me that today in Europe you can really very rarely find a house builder who doesn't want to have solar panels on the roofs and use the heat pump, because it's, I would say, the natural desire of the house owner that if I have this technological possibility, why not to produce my own energy, why not to be a little bit in a more control what I consume, how I consume it, and on top of it, this technology is getting cheaper and cheaper. And I'm sure that very soon we will have also batteries in most of our houses, and we will use them to power the electric cars. I mean, the prices are going down and technologically is more and more possible. So this makes, of course, the big companies, incumbents, nervous, because I mean, the business model has to be changed. Very often, at the same time, to be fair to them as well, they bear a lot responsibility for making sure that the grid works. So they have to have a big reserve for the balancing, for example, of these intermittent sources, and it also costs a lot of money. So therefore, we need to find the way how to also include, for example, big renewable energy providers also in balancing responsibilities for the grids, but that's for the big renewable energy providers. Yes, but for the prosumers, what is very important is that we very much want to unleash this potential and push also through this legislative proposal that you put on the table for removal of all barriers and also to allow the small installations, so-called priority dispatch. So we would like to remove it for everything else and just to keep it really for the small renewables energy production, like the prosumers or some communities where you have a couple of houses, you know, using the renewable source together so they can produce the energy, and if they would have access also to sell it to the grid. So it's in that proposal, and I think it would be very important that member states would support it now, because it will be discussed this year, because in that case I think we would see a huge transformation of how these renewable technologies would be picked and how most of house owners or most of households would actually become prosumers. And I think that also, I saw it in Netherlands, very often you have problems with so-called NIMBY, not in my neighborhood. The people do not like very much to have a big windmill close to the garden, or an airport too close nearby, or even a big solar panel field. And in Netherlands, they developed a new concept. So they are using, for example, the communal lands along the highways, or the communal land in the cities for installing all the solar panels or the wind turbines. But they do it in very clever way. So they are selling the shares to the citizens. Do you want to be part of this community property, this solar field, all these wind turbines? So you would be the shareholder. You could get some revenue from the operation of these companies, and it helps to change the attitude. So the mayor told me, and therefore I'm using this example, that this is how we can transform the NIMBY project, not in my neighborhood, into PIMBY, please, in my neighborhood. And I think that that's a little bit the approach we have to use more often. But in your case, I can promise you that we definitely want to make sure that prosumers would have it much easier than today.
So there are a few people that have marked they have a question. We do need to move on to the next round of questions regarding the future of Europe, being more general questions about the future of Europe. If nobody has questions within that chapter of our dialogue, you do. This is for the general round. We'll let you start off.
Hello, Maroš. I'm Brian Matheson. We met 2 years ago at the Engineering Association in Copenhagen.
So it was in that House of Engineers?
Yes,
exactly.
Yes, so
that's, you see that I remember it.
You remember very well. Right now there's a big debate about Nord Stream in Denmark. We are involved in a number of research projects. I work with 100% renewable and change to large-scale integration. I have a lot to do with wind and electricity. What becomes very clear to me is we cannot electrify everything. And this thing about batteries in houses, it's really not a very good general idea if we want to transform to large-scale renewable integration. The other thing that becomes clear is that we cannot electrify everything. I was in a debate with Lawrence Smith, the General Secretary of NSOE, recently, and he actually said it himself. If we electrify the heating and transport sector in London, we'll have to triple the distribution grid, and it's simply not feasible, so we need to do something else. And in my opinion, there are two options. One thing is natural gas, the other is district heating, and energy savings comes without saying. So in our research, we see that there's really a lot of opportunity to use excess heat. Just as a small example, maybe I could mention the Netherlands. The Netherlands is smaller than Denmark. They have 3 times the amount of people. They have less than 5% district heating and use heaps of natural gas. In Denmark, we have more than 60% of houses have district heating. So my question to you is, what do you see as the reason for that difference between Denmark and the Netherlands? Because in my mind, the physics are the same in the Netherlands as they are here. And the other question goes in the same sort of realm. How do you regard the Nord Stream in this respect? Because in my mind and in our research, I would say there's a risk that we don't harvest the excess heat that we actually have in Europe if we start to really depend even more on these investments. So those 2 questions.
No, thank you very much. Both rather comprehensive and complex one. I mean, the first one, the district heating. Of course, if you have a well-functioning district heating, or in other parts of Europe, district cooling, that's the best solution, because I mean you have clearly savings based on scale. You can really produce the heat or the cooler much more efficiently. But you also have to be able to provide the good service and a good price. And I think this is what's happening in the Nordic countries. I can tell you the example from Central Europe, where we are actually struggling with this, because it was also very centrally organized, and we had district heating everywhere. What happened over the last 10 years simply was that there was not enough investment coming into these district heating companies. They became outdated. So you exactly, if you are in the winter, in many of Central European countries, and if you have a lot of snow, everywhere you really know where the district heating pipes go through, because it's green grass there, So this is how much heat is lost between, this heat producer and then the houses or apartments. And simply this heat became too expensive. So we had this very, strange development that in this beautiful small cities or villages in the mountains, suddenly, we had in apartment block these small chimneys coming in, because the people wanted to save, to spare some pennies, because they simply believe that these district heating companies been very expensive. So therefore now I think that a very intensive discussion is going on, because it's clear realization that this is not the way to go, that simply these companies must be much more competitive. They have to offer better prices and use the newer technologies, and therefore we also adopted this heating and cooling strategy and put the district heating at a quite prominent place in this winter package. And part of it also has to do with the tradition. So probably the fact that Netherlands was so rich with gas also had to do with the fact that Netherlands is now one of the countries which is struggling with for example, renewable energy target, because again the whole structure of the industry was very much different. And coming to the Nord Stream, that's actually the question which is very much reflecting, I would say, a lot of elements, aspects of the Energy Union. Because first one, it's a principal question which we are proposing to discuss to our Russian partners, that how much gas do we need in Europe? And our estimate is that in 2030, we would probably need as much gas as we use today, because we believe that coal would be gradually phased out in more and more member states, that we would use more gas for example, heavy-duty vehicles or in public transports, in maritime shipping. So our assessment is that we would need between 380 to 450 billion cubic meters, which is, roughly the consumption we have these years, even though this winter was particularly harsh. At the same time, if you look how much we use the infrastructure which is already built for getting Russian gas to Europe, we are using it at the rate of around 60%. So my question is, do we need additional 2 huge pipelines which would add 100 or 110 BCM of additional capacity? Do we need additional 2 pipes going to Turkey, even though the Turkey is growing market? And that's, I would say, the discussion which I think is very important, because the project, when it was presented for the first time, and we know that it was very shortly after the annexation of Crimea and all that unfortunate developments in east of Ukraine, was very much presented at that time, and very much perceived by many in Europe as some kind of punishment for Ukrainians and as a way of bypassing this country. And then, even though in Europe we have a lot of discussions and differences on many issues on this, we have unanimity. that the transit through Ukraine should continue also in the post-2019 period. And I think that I can speak with a lot of authority because I was invited to debrief the ministers in the Energy Council, in Foreign Affairs Council. I was invited to the NATO Atlantic Council. I mean, and everywhere I have to say that the position was very, very clear. I mean, we need to preserve the transit route through Ukraine because of energy security, because of the importance of this project for Ukraine economy, but also for the situation in the Central and Eastern European country, which, as we have proven through the investigation of the Gazprom case, been paying in 2014, 2015, and I'm sure many years before, between 14 to 25% more for the gas than Western European partners, because they had no chance to diversify or buy it from somebody else. So that's, I would say, the overall picture why this project is so politically sensitive, why it's so hotly debated among the leaders, and why it's very difficult for me to accept the argumentation which is coming from the consortium standing behind the Nord Stream, that it's purely commercial project. Because I said that we never had the commercial project so often discussed on the highest political level in the EU. So what can we do about this? And I know that it's very sensitive in Denmark. Again, that's a private initiative, and here we are talking about very complex legal situation, because you have Russian project, Swiss consortium, international partners, you have offshore part, you have onshore part, and the European legislation is very clear if it comes to what has to happen to the pipeline when they are onshore. It's less clear or less conclusive what you have to do with the pipelines which are offshore, and therefore what we concluded as a soundest legal conclusion was that nobody can doubt that if it comes to the offshore part of this pipeline, that we are actually in the situation where we have collision of two legal regimes, European one and the Russian one. And if you have a collision of two laws, what's the usual way how to proceed is that you negotiate the regime, how these two legal regimes would be applied to these concrete specific projects. And therefore, after, I have to say, very long deliberations, we are now finalizing the proposal, which I hope the college would adopt very soon, and we will present it to our member states and to the European Parliament. We are asking for the mandate to negotiate with Russia the public framework under which this project should be built. And we want that in that future arrangement, the core principles of the energy European law would be respected. What are the principles? Every single company in Europe knows them and have to respect them. Unbundling, transparency of the operations, third-party access, and of course respect for all the environmental and other norms, which of course are part of the EU law. So this is I would say the legal aspects which we would like to cover by these negotiations, but we also included the very strong demand that this project shouldn't in no way put under the danger the transit through Ukraine, and should not have negative impact on the situation in Central and Eastern European countries. So that's the idea which we want to include in the mandate. Of course, we'll see how our member states would support us with that, how we will be able to negotiate it with Russians, but of course I think that it should be also in their interest to have the general discussions with Europe, how the infrastructure is used, what kind of infrastructure do we need, because it could really happen that we would be talking about stranded assets 10, 15, 20 years down the road. And we would be talking about long legal disputes on different aspects of these pipelines if we do not have this public framework and the clarity for all sides how this project should be actually viewed. So these are, I would say, the ideas which are very fresh. We are, as I said, working on this mandate, which we want to get approved by the commissioners, I hope, within very, very short period of time.
So we are approaching the last part of our session, the future of Europe, speaking of common negotiations with Russia, Ukraine, because that is maybe something that we need to debate, talking about future of Europe. There has been challenges over the past few years. Refugee crisis, the attempts to agree have been poor
Brexit,
or meager.
yeah.
Brexit, even Denmark turning down the possibility to get rid of one of the exceptions. Lots of challenges. So you have made, Will Younger has come out with a white paper describing different scenarios for the future of Europe. A word on this white paper, on the 5 scenarios. Just briefly, which directions can we take from here?
I
as
think,
they say.
Thank you very much, Mette, for also reminding us of that white paper, because actually it's a novelty, and this very much reflects, to be quite honest, how we felt in the Commission and College over the last few years, because very often you saw that there are different priorities, different approaches from the member states, different expectations, and also different preferences for the pace of the integration. And as we have seen, we have one very important country who decided to leave us. So we didn't want to do the same as we did in the past, that when the atmosphere was, of course, very much different because of many reasons, and to say, we propose that we do this. Because we are not sure if it would come in this way from the Commission that we would get enthusiastic support and applause from everyone, because we know that we are going through the rough times in Europe. So we wanted to start the debate in Europe. So there are 5 possibilities. Should we just keep it as it is, just carry on? Or should we just do less but do it better? Or should we simply look for the areas where we should do really more and then push it until I would say the total integration? Or should we simply really progress in all areas with this full speed integration? These are, I would say, the 5 approaches how this could be done. And I don't think that we will have the scenario 3 or scenario 4, but at least we wanted to present these questions with very concrete examples, that what would happen under first, second, or third for the concrete people. And I think that also Brexit discussion in this particular case would be very illuminating, because I have to say that I work for the European Commission and I work in European affairs. I was working before that in national capacity, so it's probably now 20 years I'm working with European affairs. But I'm surprised, I have to say. Every single week when we get the letter from another associations from the UK, like you might laugh, but it's this is the real story, that if the Brexit is not, let's say, conclusive and fast enough, how can we participate in the horse racing in Europe? And then I realized that yes, each horse has a passport concerning the vaccination, concerning all that, veterinary information. Would it be valid after the Britons leave? I said, good question. I mean, at first we have some other questions.
Then it's interesting that they ask you about
this. Yes. Then we got another question. Okay, the fresh vegetables importers. I said, okay, how it will be with phytosanitary certificates? Okay, another one to put on the list, And then you got the letter from the hospitals in London. We are providing the nuclear medicine services, and we heard that the UK wants to leave from Euratom Treaty. How it will be with the uranium we need for, I would say, the nuclear medicine services? I said, whoops, that would be quite difficult, because, Euratom is very precise about what you should do as a member and what you shouldn't do if you are not part of it. So what I want to say is there is really the zillion of the small things which have been somehow taken care of over the decades of our cooperation, which we even don't think that they exist, but they do, and somebody's taking care of them, or it was solved many years ago. System is there, system works, and I think now when we are in this very, I would say, unfortunate business of kind of dismantling something which was there for that many years, we are discovering that it's not only about the big things, about the financial obligations, about the Irish border, about how our citizens, Europeans, would live in UK and UK citizens in Europe, or about how the trade relations would look like in the future. But it has implications for thousands of the small things which we even do not realize that they exist. And of course, I mean, if something worse, if it's good, we get used to it very, very quickly. But we somehow sometimes forget that maybe it was a problem, it was the issue, and there was some kind of working group 30 years ago which was discussing this passport for racehorsing and for dogs and for something. And they did a good job, because now we even don't care, we get the sticker and we go. But that was somewhere where it happened and where it was done, and I think now we are quite happy because we see that it's very practical.
So do you honestly, do you feel any kind of, say, like, ha-ha, told you so, when they come up with these questions? Because, I mean, the Brits have to reinvent just about 40 years of government.
You know, I have to say that I don't have that feeling at all. I mean, as of course member,
just a little bit.
As a member of the Commission, to lose the country which was very important, for example, for climate change, which was very pro-market oriented, and I know that colleagues from the Energy, they have a lot of businesses in the UK, and they want to be very well integrated with them. And they've been always very open for the free trade. And on top of it, my daughter is living there. So it's
Another question?
Thank you. My name is Dr. Michael Nicholson. I'm internal manager here at SE. And I have also a background as a specialist in NSV previously. I have some questions, because we have looked into this transition in Europe, both on the production side, also on the transition on how consumption is developing. So for a long time there's been this about the security of supply issue. But looking into the near future, and also the past, for the couple of past months, we have seen a lot of instability and insecurity around Europe. I want to see also in this transition regarding both production and the consumption, there's a lot of data gathered around how is the priority in securing that also this general aspects of security.
that we would have enough production capabilities to produce enough.
No, not
of
actually the
electricity.
production as such.
Security of supply.
I feel pretty sure that it's covered. But the problem is, I see it as a lot of IT criminals coming into the play.
A lot of
IT criminal crime.
IT, yes,
Yeah.
I see.
How
yes,
do
I
you secure it? What is
Yeah,
the priority from the Commission about, on the one side, the security of supply for the consumers, and on the other side, the security of the general citizens in Europe? So, thank you.
No, you're absolutely right, and this is again, you know,
Good question.
from one side we want to put everything, or as much as we can, on electricity ground. From other side it makes us, and we want to digitize everything. From other side it makes us very, very vulnerable. But I thought that you've been talking about some of the tense situations we had in some of our member states during the last harsh winter, because we saw that some countries, there have been problems with electricity supplies, and we had some congestions or even blocked borders and so on and so forth. And therefore, if you are from the energy sector, if you can help me to spread the message that this is one more and very important argument why we need the better regional cooperation, that this is what we want to achieve through these regional operational centers. I know that transmission system operators hate it, and I think for the wrong reason, and we are ready to discuss it. But what I want them to understand is that we would like to avoid this situation in advance, meaning that we would like to get the TSOs to sit together on the regional basis, on a cross-border basis, and discuss the scenarios before something happens. And not only I would say the emergency situations, there is a problem with some converter, or there is a problem with some kind of production facility, but also the capacity needs for the future. We'll have very difficult discussion about the capacity mechanisms. We'll have very difficult discussions about how we use our interconnections, because for me, I have to say it was also quite a surprise that we invested millions in building the interconnections for electricity, and because of different regulatory obligations, more than 60% of that capacity is blocked from commercial use. So I think it's a waste of money, if you ask me, yeah? Because, I mean, if you have the interconnection, so let's use them. Let's really sell the cheaper energy. Let's work a little bit on the market principles, but we know that it's not the case, and therefore we need to go there. But you asked the question about the cyber security. And it's very relevant one. It's cybersecurity, it's protection of critical infrastructure. We have seen what happened with some of European airlines, with how our internet was slowed or blocked, I mean, during the last 2 years, and we are just discussing where this virus came from. Was it North Korea? Was it somebody else? Where did it come from? And it just shows that simply here we are still very, very vulnerable, and we have to deploy much more resources and to develop much stronger defenses against the cybercrime. And there are several initiatives which have been taken in this regards on the European level. So they are now in the process of being approved as a new legislation. But I still believe that this would not be enough. That we just simply would need to invest much more resources and much more money on this on the national and the European level, and to really have that cooperation we have between the CERTs. These are the emergency centers for cyber crimes, and if something happens, these people communicate together, they inform each other, they are analyzing the virus, they're trying to detect where it comes from, and work with the common solutions. And we would need also to unite the efforts from the sectors where it's quite successful, like for example banking sector. They simply didn't trust the governments, or so they went for very strong system of how to protect their own products, because they knew that otherwise the people would simply not believe these bank machines and would not believe the credit cards if they wouldn't be secured enough. Also, of course, the militaries, they have their own system. So I would say that we have the areas where we are doing well, where we are strong, and we would need to bring that know-how and to find the most efficient way how we can use that practice, that software, that expertise also for the critical infrastructure if it comes to the energy, because if there is no electricity, nothing works.
So we are approaching the end of this dialogue. I've been wondering, because you talked to a lot of people. You told me you were in Finland, and now you're in Denmark, and you go to all the member states for these sessions. What do they ask you? Is there something that worries all Europeans? Is there something that's on everybody's mind?
Yeah, I think, I was also in split it in several aspects. When I was campaigning to get the democratic legitimacy and support to become the commissioner. So previous commissioner decided you have to be elected, because before that I was ambassador, I was civil servant, and I also felt that if you are a commissioner, you are politician and hopefully technocrat at the same time, but you clearly have to be tested if the people want you to do the job. So I went to the election campaign, and I have to say it was very humbling and a very, very important lesson for me, because I simply realized that when I'm somewhere in Eastern Slovakia and I'm trying to explain what I do, that it's a challenge, you know, and this old grandma is looking at you. Okay, my son. So what do you really? So then you realize at first that you have a problem to speak your own language, because we all use this EU speak. That we are just simply speaking in all these terms which are not comprehensible to accept our Brussels bubble. Then, of course, you realize that it's quite difficult to explain that what you do, and then what kind of relevance it has for that particular small town in Eastern Slovakia, and for that concrete old lady who was wishing me well, but she just wanted to know. And that's, I think, what is today the challenge for all of us on the EU level, very often on the national level, that the world is so fast, that we are living with this 24 news cycle, that we are kind of overwhelmed by the social media, which really can make a problem viral, and you are permanently reacting to something. Sometimes we are reacting so much that we do not have the time to think enough about the solution. So that I would say very much reflect where we are, but the questions are very similar, of course, depending on where we are in the economic cycle. I remember very dramatic discussions I have with the citizens during the crisis. I mean, what will be with my jobs? What our kids should study? Will we have the euro next year? How can we afford to help the countries which are not behaving according to the rules? Now, of course, because we are now, thanks God, on the incremental curve, the economy is growing, more and more people have the jobs, and the discussion is really about, I would say, again, the current and the future situation. So what would be the professions we would need in the future? What would be the international climate? How we would be cooperating with our neighbors? How United States would impact us? And then, of course, each country has something specific relating all to the situation there, or to the relationship with the neighbor. But generally, I have to say that people very much like to be European. They, especially the young generation, they really very much embraced that Europe is the natural space for free movement. They like to take the train or the plane and just travel freely. And at the same time, which is very natural, they love their own country. And they don't see the contradictions in between, and I think this is how it should be in the future.
So with all these people trying to identify with things, seeking answers that are close to them, what's going to happen to my job, my house, my close climate, are you ever tempted to draw the conclusion that the EU is maybe becoming too large and too abstract for its own citizens?
I wouldn't say too large, even though I have to. I know how big it is, because I told you how difficult it is to visit all the EU member states. But I think that the people also realize that if you want to be a Champions League team, we simply have to be of this size. I mean, if you look at US, China, Russia, Brazil. Simply, we see all these emerging economies becoming stronger and stronger. If we look where we are right now, how the G7 is composed, how the Security Council of the UN is formed, we might have totally different situation in 2030 or in 2050. I mean, in 2050, none of the EU member states, including Germany, if the economics would respect the predictions, would be at the G7. But as a Europe together, we simply will be there all the time, because we are the biggest economy in the world. We have a bigger GDP than US, bigger than China. If you look at the investments, in most of the countries I visit, also outside of Europe, we are or number one or number two investor, and for many of these countries also number one or number two trading partner. So we are very important global player, and I think it would be very difficult to do that on the individual country by country basis. So I think that we have to work together, and work together in a positive, in a good way. And I think you Nordic countries are offering such a great example that you are all very proud of your national flag. When I see your hockey teams or your football team, it's a real match, but then you have a good beer once it's over. And I think this is how we should do it all over in Europe.
Well, thank you for doing the effort of reaching out and answering the questions of at least the people gathered here today in this session. Thank you for coming. thank you for coming. Thank you for all your good questions, and thank you to SE for allowing us to stay here in this wonderful venue. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you.